talking about right triangle trig some, and if you weren't here, if you need to review, here's the video to watch. So there is a word that we can use to remember the ratios of a right triangle. Now, these ratios can only be used in a right triangle this way. There's other ways we can use them, but you'll learn about that outside of geometry and Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, even in trig class. So we're just focusing on the first three trig functions in right triangle trig. So there's this word you can use to remember the ratios, and it is called SOHCAHTOA. So we're going to look at the so part, and it is for sine, and we abbreviate it like that, and it is your opposite side over your hypotenuse. So if you look at this triangle that's given, your longest side is always the hypotenuse, and we are never going to call it the opposite or the adjacent. We may say, hey, that's opposite the right angle. That's only to show us where it is. But for the trig functions, we will never call the hypotenuse opposite or adjacent. It can only be called the hypotenuse. So if we're looking at our sine and it's opposite of adjacent and it says sine of A, we're going to look at this angle, and the side opposite side, angle A, is the side that does not touch the angle. So 5 and 13 actually make that angle. So it's going to be the other one. So 12 is our opposite of A, and our hypotenuse is 13. And if you look at sine of B, now we're looking at this angle, and the side that does not touch it, 12 and 13 make that angle, so 5 has to be the opposite over hypotenuse. It's going to stay the same. So let's look at this. Let's use this function. So we're going to skip to number 5 right now instead of 3 and 4. We'll come back to that in just a minute. And so we're going to say find x. So we know that we have our opposite. If we're looking at angle 41, we have our opposite, we have our hypotenuse, so we know we can use sine. So sine of 41 equals our opposite over our hypotenuse. Now x and 17 are dividing right now, and we got to get x by itself. So the opposite of division is multiplication. We can cancel that 17 out, but we're going to bring it to the other side. And now in our calculator, we're going to hit 17 times, and you're going to hit that sign button, and 41. Now there is a parentheses that opens up, but since this is our last little thing to put in the calculator, you don't really have to close it. But if you want to get in the habit of it, go for it. So 17 times the sine of 41, and I'm just going to go to the nearest tenth, is 11 and it's 1/5, so it's going to be 11.2. And x is 11.2 units. So let's look at number 6. We're looking at this angle. So the side opposite is 29. And this is our hypotenuse. This is one where you're going to want to say 29 is our hypotenuse because it's the slanted one. We just flipped our triangle. We rotated it around some. So got to be careful. So we know we're using sine because we have opposite and hypotenuse. So the sine of 73 is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And we got to find the hypotenuse. Well, if you look at the one above it, we brought that denominator over and multiplied it. We can't bring the numerator over. That doesn't work that way. We always bring our denominator over and we multiply it. But we still have x with something. We need it by itself. So right now, x and the sine of 73 is multiplying. So we need it to do opposite. We're not going to bring x over. We're going to bring sine of 73 over. So x equals 29 over sine of 73. So anytime you have x or whatever variable you're using on the bottom, you're going to end up dividing at the end. So we have 29 in your calculators. 29 divided by sine of 73. And if you round it, you get 30.3. So let's go over to number 3 here. We're looking for an angle, and that's a little bit different. Okay, if we still look at the sides we have, 9 is opposite angle x. This is my opposite, and 14 is my hypotenuse. So that tells me, oh, I'm going to be using sine. So sine of x, because I don't know what that angle is, equals opposite over hypotenuse. So when I know what the sine is, but I don't know what the angle is, this is called the inverse sine. And you'll see this part on your calculator, but you also may see this word, arc sine. Okay, that just means, hey, we know everything else, but we are looking for now the angle. So there's a special button for this on your calculator. If you look carefully, if you hit the second button, which is the top left-hand button, so top left button, and then you hit sine on your calculator, you should see sine to the -1. This is the inverse sine. And then you put 9 divided by 14 in there. You can close that parentheses out, and you should get 40.00, and we're going to go to the nearest whole number for our angles. So x equals 40 degrees. So anytime you're looking for an angle, you're going to use that second function button. You either use second sine, second cosine, second tangent, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So let's look at this. We know we are looking for an angle in number 4, so we're going to use our second button. If we're looking at x, what sides do we have to x? Well, 31 does not touch this side, does not touch that angle. So that's the opposite. 38 is our hypotenuse. We know that because it doesn't touch the right angle. So I know I'm using sine. We don't know the degree. And we have opposite over hypotenuse. So in our calculator, we're going to hit the second sine and then 31 divided by 38. And you get 54.6, which then rounds this to 55 degrees. So that is the first part of our word. That's our first trig function. So now we're going to look at co. And this is the cosine. And we abbreviate that with COS. And it is our adjacent side, and we'll just abbreviate ADJ over the hypotenuse. Adjacent is the side that touches it. Now remember, the hypotenuse is only the hypotenuse. It will touch both sides, but we can only say that it's the hypotenuse. We can't call it the adjacent. We can't call it the opposite. So if I'm looking, we were looking at cosine of A here, and I'm looking at angle A. The side that touches it, well, we have 5 and 13. 13 is our hypotenuse. So 5 is our adjacent. We're just going to leave them as fractions unless they want us to give them a decimal. And so if I'm looking at B now, my adjacent changes. 12 is my adjacent. 13 is still my hypotenuse. So now that we know how to use our second sine, cosine, tangent buttons, we're looking for arc cosine or the inverse cosine, looking for our angle, we're just going to go to number 9 now. And we know, hey, we're looking for a degree, so we're going to use our second button. What sides do we have? Well, we know this is our hypotenuse. And so 44 is touching angle X, so it has to be our adjacent. So that tells me I have to use cosine. So cosine of X equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So you're going to go second cosine. It's right next to your sine button of 44 divided by 52. And I should have written this. There's no equals here. Well, I mean, we can do equals x. And we're going to round it to our nearest whole number. And so this is 32 degrees. We look at number 10. Same thing. We're looking for a degree. So we're probably going to use our inverse cosine. And our hypotenuse is 24. And this side touches that x. So that's our adjacent. So it tells me I'm going to use cosine. And so it's going to be cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So on my calculator, I'm going to put second cosine of 19 divided by 24. And you get 37.6, which would then round to 38. So let's look at these. Finding the sides. We're not going to use the second button on those. That's only when we're finding degrees. And so what are we going to use? We're going to use sine or cosine. Well, we know we have our hypotenuse. This side touches that 62 degrees. So it is my adjacent. And so I know I have to use cosine now. So cosine of 62 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And my hypotenuse is 7. So x and 7 are dividing. I need to multiply that 7 on the other side. Now I have x by itself. So in my calculator, 7 times, and don't hit the second button, just hit cosine of 62, and you've got 3.28. We're going to go to the nearest tenth. Be prepared to round to whatever they tell you to, and there you go. We're looking at this next one. X, look at 24. X is our hypotenuse. 27 touches 24, so it has to be adjacent. So I know I'm using cosine of my degree equals my adjacent over my hypotenuse, which is x. And so same thing, I've got to bring that denominator over and multiply, do the opposite operation. But now x is in something else, so we have to now do the opposite of multiplication to get this away from x. We're going to go 27 over the cosine of 24. So 27 divided by cosine of 24. Do not hit the second button. And you will get 29.55. So that 5 is going to round that up. And so you'll end up getting 30. And we're going to put that 0 behind that decimal to let people know that's not an exact 30. We rounded it. All right, so we have our so, ka, and now let's look at our toa. So that is tangent, and we abbreviate that by using TAN. And this is our opposite over adjacent. So you should know this because we've talked about opposite and adjacent. We will not use our hypotenuse when we use tangent. So it is out of the question. So if I'm looking at A and I want opposite over adjacent, I know I'm not going to use 13 because that's the hypotenuse. I'm not going to even use it for B because that's still the hypotenuse. It's in the same triangle. So my opposite of A is the one that doesn't touch it. Well, this one touches it. 12 doesn't. Opposite over, and my adjacent touches it. So now am I looking at B? 13 still a hypotenuse. I won't use it. So my opposite, so 12 touches it. So 5 has to be my opposite. And my adjacent is 12. If you look at tangent, you see that they're just flipped. They're called reciprocals. In the same triangle, the tangent of one is the reciprocal of the tangent of the other. So if you have the first one correct, you just flip it for the other one. So let's go back. We're going to use the same things we used, our second and all that, for when we look for our angle. So if we're looking at x, 25 is not the hypotenuse, and it touches that. So this has to be our adjacent. And 21 does not touch it, so it has to be our opposite. And I know if I have adjacent and opposite, I'm using tangent. And it is opposite over adjacent. So we're still going to use our second button. This still could be called arctan, like arcsine, arccosine, arctangent, or the inverse tangent. So in your calculators, you're going to put second tangent of 21 divided by 25, and you're going to get 40 degrees. Let's solve for x here, and it is an angle, so I'm going to use my second button. I don't have my hypotenuse. This would be my hypotenuse here, so I don't have that. I know I have my opposite and adjacent. Here's my adjacent. So I know I'm using tangent equals opposite over adjacent. So that's the arctan of 6 over 10. So we're going to hit second tangent, 6 divided by 10. And you have 30.9, which rounds that to 31 degrees. All right, so we're going to find a side now. We have this side. We're looking at this angle. Here's our hypotenuse. We don't have that, so we can't use it. So we're not going to use sine or cosine because they have hypotenuse in them. So we got to figure out which one's adjacent, which one's opposite. 18's touching that, so that's my adjacent. This one's my opposite. So I'm going to go tangent of 75 equals opposite over adjacent. Got to bring that 18 over and multiply, do the opposite operation to separate it. And so in my calculator, 18 times, do not hit second, just times the tangent of 75. And you get, and because it's a side, we're going to go to the nearest tenth, 67.2. And let's look at this. We're looking at 39. This side touches it. It's my adjacent because here's my hypotenuse. So we're not using it. So this has to be opposite. So the tangent of 39 equals opposite over adjacent. Bring my denominator over. You can't ever bring the numerator over. It doesn't work that way. And now split this up by dividing on both sides. If I divided this by this, it just cancel out. It just makes a 1. So x times 1 is x. And so now 49 divided by tangent of 39. And you get, we're going to go to the nearest tenth, 60.5. So now you have sine, cosine, and tangent. You have this little word to remember it, SOHCAHTOA. And that is a quick right triangle trig.